morning, ASEAN. Welcome to the ASEAN Breakfast Call this morning. Today is Monday, the 24th of March. We have a full studio with us today, coming from Sekolah Activism. Introduce yourself, guys.
Hi, I'm Alexandra.
Isham.
Mayan.
Pepper.
Vienna. Okay, so we'll be doing an exclusive session with them later at 9 a.m. So stay tuned if you guys want to hear their stories about how they became activists. Yeah. So we shall start with the first news piece. Pepper, who will be co-hosting with guest commentators here today. The first news piece comes from Phnom Penh Post, talking about how Cambodia and US signed a repatriation agreement in 2002. But this resulted in a lot of, I should say, refugees from Cambodia in the past being sent back to their own country, deported, mainly, for suspected crimes issue. And then this particular case is about a prisoner turned poet who scooped up prizes in the US festivals. However, however, he was deported, even though his family was still in the US, right? So in his film, right, he talked about how what happened in the past, how their life experiences were like in a refugee camp. Because he was born in a Thai refugee camp to Cambodian parents before the family moved to the US, and then was jailed for 14 years, and then being convicted of attempted murder. So after that, he never acquired US citizenship, and now he is immediately deported back to Cambodia, even though his family is in the US. So we're just thinking of how this of course this is a special case, but there are a lot of people in the refugee camps whose lives are always uncertain. We heard from one of the refugees experts in Malaysia, and she was sharing about how their lives are really always made quite hard by the government officials, even though, you have a UNHCR card in Malaysia. So, and they're always subjected to a lot of, let's say, bullying from the authorities because they are never really considered citizens and never really have a formal status. So, these are just some plights from the refugees.
I think that refugees in any country is always getting the wrong end of the stick or the bad end of the stick. Even in Malaysia, we've got refugees here, and they are also we've also heard stories of them being mistreated as well. For instance, lots of stories are coming out from Tenaga Nita. Tanya will be able to tell you the horrible stories that come out from those refugee camps in our own country, in beautiful Malaysia, and these things are happening. But to be sent back to Cambodia, I think that one is good. I think it's even worse. Cambodia has got a very bad human rights track record. They have a very closed government, and anyone who opposes the government will be treated just like this, lah. And I think that this guy, I only wish him all the best, lah. He's trying to change and make his country better, but he's going to face a lot of difficulties, lah.
Well, yeah. So on a related note of speaking out against the government, but this is from Vietnam, of course, released by the Vietnam Committee on Human Rights, talking about how a blogger who was critical of the government is actually being imprisoned right now. And he's not the first, neither the last. There's more than 200 political prisoners in Vietnam currently. This is despite our earlier news report last week, talking about how Vietnam declared certain human rights standard via their constitution. So we will urge, the Vietnam government to really do what is stated in the press statement that we read out last week. So, because Pham Viet Thao, which is a blogger that was imprisoned under Article 258 of their criminal code, he was a former inspector in charge of corruption issues in the Ministry of Culture. And now he's also a member of the Vietnam Writers Union. So he started an internet blog that was critical of Vietnamese government leaders. So he, like I mentioned, that he wasn't the first, neither the last, because recently there was also bloggers, even land rights activists, Buddhist monks, journalists, writers, singers, labor activists, and pro-democracy campaigners, and members of ethnic and religious minorities who are imprisoned, you know. So yeah, any thoughts on that, guys?
Well, to the Vietnam government, I'd like to give you a warning. Malaysia also has a very famous blogger who blogged whatever he thought, and then they put him in prison. They put the ISA on him. Right now, he's in England. And he still blocked. You just cannot put Raja Petra down. So if you don't want a Raja Petra on your country, writing from from somewhere else and being critical of you, then I think that you should just let bloggers do what they do best, which is just talk and just say what's on their minds. They have an issue. If I was part of the government, I would take these bloggers into consideration, that these are the voice of the people. They, if it's fair comment, then I would take it up and do something about it. Really, you don't want another Raja Petra on your hands, just exposing submarine deals and murder scandals and sexual videos. Really, do you really want to have another Raja Petra in Vietnam? Think about it.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about the love of the country. You know, we're not trying to really criticize you. It is really to improve the country, right? That's what activists do. I believe.
Sure, I think so too. But I also believe that, yeah, sure, if somebody slanders another person, I think that you should take him to task. But if the person is giving comments, we should always have freedom of expression and just listen and discuss and dialogue. Really, I do not think that it's right to say that berdebat bukan budaya kita. Really, debate is what first world countries do. We talk, we discuss, we trash out issues just by talking, not with our hands, not by punching one another in the face. Come on, what? This is Malaysia. We are moving into the status of developed country, but here we are still threatening people with, I'm going to smash your face and I'm going to burn your house down. Is this really the way you want to have people talking in the street?
So having said that, now we will move on to a news piece about an update of Typhoon Haiyan.
Can I just comment on that?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Thinking about Vietnam, we have to look at the history.
Right.
We have to look because, of course, Pepper is absolutely right. There are universal themes that we need to look at and think about adopting. But we have to appreciate Vietnam's particular history. And change can only come from within. It shouldn't really come from any foreign source. I mean, imagine if, right now, the Western media is telling us how to handle our affairs. A lot of people not too happy with that. Vietnam's particular history has always had people meddling in their particular affairs, having the French there, the Americans there, and now even their ASEAN neighbors, whether we be right or wrong, have no right to tell them how to treat their own citizens. Change has to come from within them. And if we look at it, how old is Vietnam since their independence?
Fair enough.
They're very young. All of us are very young countries. The change will come. It will come slow. It will come painful. I hope it will not come bloody, but the change will come because borders are fading, information is becoming free. Just Turkey the other day, they banned Twitter, right?
Yeah, that was crazy.
They banned Twitter, but their VPN connections are highest it's ever been. That means connecting through secure networks. Their usage is as high as it's ever been. That's what happens when you try to clamp down. But it comes from within. Right? It comes from within. So the change in particular Vietnam, my father was the ambassador to Vietnam, first Malaysian ambassador to Vietnam.
Ooh.
And so it wasn't an ambassador there, it was just a mission lah. So he said that the people there, because you gotta look at the people, don't define a country by its government. Don't define a country by its government. You gotta look at the people. The people there, they're very, very humble. They're very, very hardworking. And the business there, the economy is booming.
Yeah. But I should add a counterpoint. Maybe because looking back at history, let's say, apartheid regime.
Yes.
You know, it won't happen if you just leave it naturally, like just, okay, it's an internal domestic affair and handle it yourself, you know. To me, I see it as a mutual thing, you know, that will work best if there's enough internal movement for change and also external pressure as well.
If you're referring to the South Africa apartheid, where the external pressure pressured the government, but it was really the one that brought the straw that brought the camel's back was really the internal pressure.
Yeah, no doubt. But I'm saying that it cannot be just leave it at for their own internal affairs kind of thing, and then not interfere if there is a gross violation of human rights principles. There should be international coverage on that as well. As our shared responsibility.
My concern is since the end of apartheid, I don't see where international pressure has worked in reforming regimes that we want to reform. North Korea is still there. Cuba still has its ways. I'm not sure how that works. Because international pressure, looking at it domestically, seems always to be, they have their own agenda kind of thing. If you, from the people who live in that country. I mean, if you just look at it from our point of view, anyone tells us what to do, we feel the Westerners have their own agenda, right? The Europeans, the Americans. So it really has to come strong from within. And it takes generations. I think we're always thinking of, it should be within our particular lifetime now, right? Vietnam should be where we are now, or any other country like that should be where we are now, or we should be where other countries are now, but we are very young still. I think that's one fact that a lot of us don't particularly pay heed to. America, the most robust democracy in the world, is 200 over years old.
Robust?
The most.
So while I concur with you, talking about how it should be a step-by-step thing,
Yeah.
but I personally think that, having international pressure or attention is not all that bad. In fact, like for example, for MH370, I personally think that it's good that the international media reminds our government sometimes of what it should be. What it should be doing in its security practices, in a lot of aspects, whether it's handling with the media and media freedom, stuff like that.
I don't think they're doing that, to be honest, but okay.
Yeah, well, because we had a session with FZ.com and how we were talking about the journalists on the ground who were feeling how the international media attention were actually giving a different kind of pressure to the Malaysian government. Like, in the past, they have always faced domestic journalists, and because of that, they are able to ask, which media are you from? And then they're able to block you from press conferences in the future. So, but having international attention, though, will not allow you to do that anymore, because you can no longer say, okay, I want to block CNN or something. Yeah, so that's why I think that it should be a two-way thing.
Two-way street.
Yeah, like a multi-pronged approach.
But to assume that the international media has no agenda of their own, or no,
well,
of course, they need to fill their column inches.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole
Yeah,
everything
that's
has been
true.
2 weeks of no news, so well,
You have to make something up,
we gotta make something up, When
Yeah.
all the speculation comes out, and because the speculation is written in CNN, we believe it.
Just a quick comment on media and how they work too.
Right. So, well, if we could, let's move on to a
Sure,
little
sure. Sorry.
about the MH370. No, that was
Okay.
a good
leading.
point, a different point of view, definitely. So MH370, what we know yesterday from The Guardian was that Chinese officials found images and debris allegedly from the plane. Yeah, so they were talking about how their satellite detected all this scattered debris, and it now became the focus in the Indian Ocean. But we have Pepper talking about how this morning the French came in as well.
Yeah, it seems this morning the French has also offered clearer images of that particular debris. And really, we're just grasping at straws, but I'd rather just be grasping at straws than grasping at nothing. Really, you just looking at the pictures of families who are anguished, my heart just goes out for them, really.
And also, so since we don't really know much about MH370 currently, we will be talking about another, let's say, disaster that happened. But this is where it happened in the Philippines, talking about Typhoon Haiyan, or Yolanda, as known to the locals, talking about how Manila Bulletin was sharing how this incident, prompted, of course, a lot of aid agencies to send relief and whatnot, and a lot of them has been found to be dumping the rotten relief goods. We don't understand why, because there were sacks of rotten food aid that was reportedly buried in Palo Leyte in Philippines, right? So, and the relief goods were supposedly drenched in rainwater when it was supposed to be sent to the typhoon victims. So we were just talking about how aid agencies, there are things that could go wrong in the process of.
I've known this for years, that in every disaster there are always profiteers who try to make a profit at somebody else's bad luck at disaster sites. So, for instance, during the tsunami in a few years ago, aid that was sent to the tsunami hit areas were actually carted out of the aircrafts onto lorries that were then sent to another holding depot. And then these profiteers would then go up to the aid agencies like Red Cross or Red Crescent to negotiate a price for these aid to be released to the victims of the disaster area. This is just ludicrous. People making money at somebody else's misfortune. But it seems this happens. A friend of mine was at the tsunami. They actually flew in to do some volunteer work. And they were also saying the same things, that there was supposed to be aid coming in at the airport, but we can't find it. So where has it gone to? It's somebody has carted it away to hold it somewhere else. And this report suggests to me that the profiteers would rather destroy the aid than to give it out to the victims. If I don't get my money, if I cannot make some money out of this, then I'll rather just destroy it. I'll just bury it somewhere, which is just inhuman. Which human being thinks like that?
The human being that has nothing to lose.
Yeah, it's true.
Good point.
That's true.
I'm actually, there was once, right? I heard, I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard during one of the floods in Kwanzan that aid was given to them, but the aid, the money that was given, it was transferred somewhere else. So this brings up a question: who do we trust right now? Can we trust the people that we are giving aid to, and where does the money go to, and all that?
Yeah, I heard something similar about that.
The money that is given to Kwanzan flood, it went somewhere else. So, and that trust, it was actually it was a big sum of money, then it was gone. So all that trust that the money will be given to them, it's moved somewhere.
I think that maybe one of the greatest way is to have local activists to go down to the streets themselves, and having a lot of monitoring systems in place about the whole process, and being transparent about that, about, let's say, whoever, who is your transporter, what route will it go to, and which community and whatnot.
But it's so strange that human beings will actually do these selfish kind of things, that there's aid coming in for victims, but hey, let's see if we can profit from it. Let's make the whole amount disappear. My goodness, that's just crazy, isn't it, when you think about it? A large sum of money, I'd rather keep it for myself than to see those victims, children, the old people who've got nowhere to stay, no drinking water, no food, nothing. Everything was wiped out, but the money, I'll just keep it for myself. It doesn't make sense to me that people could be so heartless.
My first reaction is not that they're heartless, it's that they have no choice. I mean, it would be in the most abject circumstances, and this is the only, or not they die. Of course, it's not the right moral choice, but maybe we're not in a position to judge.
But who hijacks these things? Is it militant groups? Is it
Could be.
individuals?
It could be.
Could be.
They're basically pirates on land, lah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
But even like those pirates on sea or whatever, the pirates nowadays,
The pirates
if they don't do it, they die. They also got kids to feed. They also have families. I'm not arguing the morals of it. Of course, it's wrong morally, but perhaps we are not in the best place to judge.
Yeah. So let's channel our hopes for the victims of Typhoon Haiyan as well. We hope that there will be a swift recovery, and we'll be updating the situation from Typhoon Haiyan victims in the future as well. So also from Manila now, talking about how China is claiming one of the Philippines island. We should say that.
It's like some rock somewhere again.
So currently in the South China Sea, there are a lot of disputes of who owns which island. Of course, most of the time they have different names for the islands, having a Chinese name and then having a Philippines name as well. But this particular one is Scarborough, or also called Panatak Shoal. Okay, so we talk about how China is pursuing unilateral actions again, this time taking over the Panatak Shoal. However, Philippines is not keeping silent because they are getting actually international attention on this, international support. In fact, by more than 60 democratic countries who wants China and other, so the 60 other countries actually wanted them to take it to the international court tribunal, and then settle the claims according to principles of international law, instead of having your navies occupying a place and then just claiming it as your own. Yeah. So we think that this is a pretty good development, because it shows that again, like, it's just back to the topic of how international attention could bring I don't know, to me, sometimes positive changes in that area. Because like, if it's just between Philippines and China, then Philippines is at a more weak position to pursue the claims. Yeah, but with an
weaker as in they have less rights to it, or army wise.
Yeah. If you leave it at a battle between the navies or something.
China will win.
If China against 60 other countries, China will still win. No, really.
Like, imagine they stop
Unless one of
all
them is
iPhone
US,
manufacturing in China. My God, the whole world will just shut down. Think about it.
Oh no, whole world becomes Samsung.
Yeah, whole world becomes Samsung. That's right.
Okay, so after this news piece from Philippines, we're talking about how Thailand has a water contamination issues coming from The Nation News, talking about how it is a major baby killer in Thailand. 22nd of March was actually the World Water Day. However, that in Thailand now, more than 200,000 people needed medical treatment after consuming contaminated water over the last 2 months, and with 2 persons dying from that. So they are talking about how a lot of people in Thailand, and we were also talking about Cambodia, talking about arsenic poisoning last week. Arsenic poisoning that would cause cancer. So this all reveals that water access, having clean water access, is such an important basic human right that everyone should deserve.
True. But I think my question would be, how did the water get contaminated in the first place? And if you have primary school children, you would know they are being taught that it's progress, it's technology that is one of the culprits in making water dirty for human beings to consume. Factories are dumping waste. We are washing way too much and just throwing everything down the drain instead of using biodegradable or recyclable things. So we are our worst enemy. Actually, human beings are our worst enemy. But I also agree that water is a basic human right, and everybody should have access to clean water. In fact, we have this problem in Malaysia as well. Just look around at every home as you drive past, walk past the houses. Every house has a water filter. But when I was a boy, we never had water filters. We just drank it straight from the tap or boiled it and we would just drink it. We never worried about what little microscopic things could be in there. As long as it's boiled, we drink it. But today we worry about mercury, we worry about arsenic, we worry about heavy metals, we worry about so many other chemicals. Yeah, so many other chemicals that are in it. It's just, I think that, government should just do something about it.
And it seems like one of the methods to increase water quality is by adding chlorine to what they are talking about in Thailand.
But chlorine just kills the microorganisms. That's what chlorine does. Yeah. But it doesn't remove arsenic. It doesn't remove contaminants, other contaminants like heavy metals or other chemicals that are being released by factories into the rivers, into the sea.
Yeah, and it's also particularly worrying because more than 700,000 children under the age of 5 dies around the world annually after drinking contaminated water. So you're talking about, close to 1 million children under 5 years old dying from, without clean
But the
access
world
to
is
water.
doing something about it. I don't know if you've seen, I saw it on TED and I saw it on Kickstarter. People are coming up with these nifty ways of portable water filters.
I've seen that.
Where you could
Straws.
with straws.
Live
they have
straw, they call
pumps.
it.
Yeah, and there are people are actually donating to ship these things all over the world to parts of the world that are affected by contaminated water. And I think that on the other hand, while we contaminate water, we also find ways to try and help others out. And then I suppose that's the bright side to the story, lah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that the land pirates that we talked about earlier does not hijack the live straws. So, with that in mind, so we'll move on to a news piece from Singapore talking about how academic stress is the top concern that's faced by parents. From Today Online, they're talking about a survey that was conducted by the National Technological University, NTU, in Singapore, who polled like 250 parents, talking about ask them a few questions, about what their concerns are. So, and also talking about, what kind of, let's say, guilt that they are facing. And a lot of them reported that a majority of them feels guilty for not spending enough quality time with their children. And what they do normally is to compensate them by buying gifts or planning an activity. But yet, 56% of them admitted that they have overlooked the social growth of their child development. So,
yeah, I think Hisham should answer this one. He's got
kind of experts from the education field
he
here.
runs the Cempaka School.
Director of Development.
Thank you. This is one of those Captain Obvious kind of studies where it says like, okay, the number one, what was it? Academic stress, right?
Yeah.
Of course, it's very symptomatic of the Asian culture of looking at grades and academic achievement as paramount to anything else. The solutions that the article was talking about, having activity and spending more time, that's of course very obvious. But we can look at this from a micro point of view, from like a parent and a household, or we can look at it from a macro, a larger point of view. Like, is it what we want our economy to be like? Do we want dual income households? Do we want the mother and father both working? With the mother and father both working, well, how about the kid at home? Right? Maybe we have to find new ways in engaging our students in school and at home, rather than just relying on the traditional ways of like, okay, let's plan family time, for example. We're in the 21st century. The schools are changing. Why shouldn't the households change as well? Why shouldn't at home change to reflect what is happening in schools? Article goes on to say about the use of iPhones and iPads and so forth. I think there's an aspect of it that is becoming more and more apparent. Not so much the student, all the kids are on it, right? iPads and iPhones and all the devices. The parents too. And they have to be more engaged there. And it's a very tricky way to get engaged. Because you want to be in the know of what your child is doing. But you don't want to be smothering, I guess.
Oh yeah, there was an article yesterday that Anima, one of our coaches, was posting about overparenting.
Yeah, overparenting.
Which Asian parents do also.
Where's the line though? That was my question. Where's the line?
Yeah, where's the line drawn? Do you do your homework for your kids when they're academically stressed out?
I personally am pretty inspired by one of the homeschooling, or I should say unschooling community in Malaysia.
Yeah,
So
unschooling.
where the parents actually took up like all the roles that the school is currently playing, and they are giving their kids spaces to explore their creativity, their passion, their interests. And how they do it is having a community of parents together to do this together, like maybe about 5 to 10 families, and I don't know,
Yes,
just proposing that.
I looked into that actually, the unschooling community, unschooling, right? They call it. They have
Yeah.
a Facebook page. They've got
Unschooling,
a
Learning
very
beyond
strong
schooling.
Yes, they've got a very strong online community.
Yeah.
But it only really works for kids about 12 and under, 13 and under, because after that, then they need some sort of formal structure and instruction that prepares them towards going to college and so forth. There are, of course,
right.
exceptions to the rule, of course. But if you're looking at it in a large scale, it doesn't work out that way, lah. Schools need to move towards what you're talking about. Schools in general need to move towards what you're talking about, where the student directs the learning in terms of finding their passion, in terms of finding their interest. Each student's learning experience must be unique to that student rather than to a system. Because if you think about it, and this is the philosophy that we use in Chapaka, if you think about it, a student that starts school today, let's say January 2014, they will finish schooling. That means they go into Tadika. 2014, what year would they finish? 2000.
Depends on how old you start.
Okay, yeah, let's say 5 years old. So that's about
2019.
2000. Say 2020 lah.
2020, yeah.
No. Don't finish the whole like
Until university.
finish university.
The age of 22.
Yeah, 22. That's about
Yeah, around 2020, 2030.
2030, right? 2030. That's about 2 decades from now, lah. Let's say 2 decades. In 2 decades, there'll be jobs now that won't exist anymore.
Yes.
In 2 decades, there'll be jobs in 2 decades' time that doesn't exist now. So therefore, how can we teach the students that we are still teaching them 2 decades before the same thing, in the same styles, in the same method? What we're trying to do is trying to put square pegs into round holes.
Yes.
And we are doing it, rather they should be doing it.
Well, I think that in the future, education shouldn't be about knowledge and memorizing that, rather to know how to search for knowledge. How to have a more well-rounded personality for you to tackle all kind of different
Absolutely.
issues.
It's not so much learning about knowledge, but it's about learning what we call 21st century skills. How do you cope with stress in this particular case? How do you do time management? How do you prioritize yourself? How do you work within teams? How do you think critically? How do you think? How do you do problem solving? All those kind of skills, rather than learning E equals MC square or mathematical formulas or things like that. It's not so much about the knowledge, but more about the skills that you need. So that's where our Asian culture is stuck in. Counting the A's, right? I think that was like what? How many years ago? What was the most number of A's someone's got for SPM? 23, right?
Was it? I thought it was
26.
15. Oh, Jesus.
No. That's 20
Yeah,
over.
no,
20
yeah.
over.
Until we capped it.
Is it?
Yeah, we
there's a
actually
cap, is it?
we did a cap after that. Talking about maximum amount of subjects you could take. Yeah, so that drastically reduced.
I remember. Front page newspaper, 23 A's.
Yeah.
But then after that, never heard from the person. Right?
He's probably teaching somewhere. She's probably teaching somewhere.
Maybe lah.
Yeah, because
I read an article where this reporter went and tracked down all these geniuses or supposed geniuses,
Child
20 years,
prodigy.
child prodigies, 20 years into the future, and they found out that they are doing exactly what they did really well. At 5 years old, you played the piano really well. They ended up as piano teachers, ballet dancers, academics. Yeah, but not one of them became another Bill Gates who used his knowledge to earn like billions of dollars. But I'm not saying it's wrong. I think that whatever that makes a child happy, as an adult, I think that's where they should pursue their happiness.
We have to stop making school something that's a chore to go to.
yep.
That's
I
the
was
objective.
speaking to Dato Ivan, who's actually on the panel of the Malaysian education, who's actually invited to sit on the panel with the Malaysian Education Board. And he was saying that over 15 years ago, they were already going towards these kind of things where it's the school has been more than just academics. And it seems the ministry is always nodding their heads and saying, yes, that's where we should go. But 15 years later, we are still not going in that direction.
Government schools can't do it because of the way the system is structured. It needs to be decentralized.
But the education, this is what the education minister is for, isn't it? He should just sit down and change the system if the system is not working.
I think
I'll-
a lot of
No, let's go.
I think a lot of schools are directing to extracurricular activities. They do a lot of camps and all that. They have budgets for it. But I really think that it's the parents who are pressuring their children into academic. They're focusing so much on academic value, not so much of the ministry. I see a lot of them really putting effort to encourage extracurricular. So
The problem is culture in Asia in general.
Yeah.
It's focused on easy definitions of success, like how many A's you get. So it's very much culture is difficult to change, even in Malaysia, in Hong Kong, Singapore,
Japan,
Korea.
South Korea.
Korea is trying, but you know,
Yeah.
cram sessions are the whole day. Scary. How can you study for the whole day? Nothing goes in.
Well, I think one of the positive development in South Korea is that, the hardworking culture has been gradually replaced with even like a cap on the maximum amount of hours you could work in the workplace. So,
Scary.
I remember that those PISA rankings, right?
Yeah.
Right, like we are what?
I don't know what place are we?
Like not very high, something like that.
55 over 62.
55 over
or
62,
like
right?
Yeah.
55 over 62.
Number one is what?
Wasn't it?
Shanghai.
Yeah, Shanghai.
China, right? China, right?
Yeah.
And the US is like 30 something as well, right? Not very high, right?
US is
Not
very
top 10.
high. Yeah.
Not top 10, right? And then there's all news about ministry should do something to encourage the PISA rankings to go up. But they did this PISA rankings 2009. China, of course, was still on top. Number 2 was Singapore, and Korea was up there. So, and US was 40 something. And then they asked, and the US at that time said, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to institute common core standards, which is their version of the KBSM. They didn't have that before. They've never had a unifying curriculum to increase the PISA. What China did after being on top for don't know how long, right? Then they were interviewed. The Chinese education minister said, we don't care about these rankings. Because the next Google is still not going to come from China. The next Microsoft, the next Apple, that company, or the next great big idea is still not going to come from China. It's still going to come from the United States.
Yeah. So what's their strategy then?
So they've got really high PISA rankings, and it's translated into the tertiary education for the US. Princeton has 40% Asians.
Go Asia.
Yeah. What's the other one? Yale has 30 something percent. UCLA has 60 over percent. You know what they call UCLA? You see lots of Asians. So they're really smart at the PISA rankings. They're really smart to get to the top Ivy Leagues, but the Fortune 500 companies, 2% of their board members are Asian. So they fall off that, smart, then they fall off and then they become tech specialists or whatnot. Because they are very good at getting good grades. So we shouldn't follow what China is doing. And the US shouldn't follow what China is doing. We shouldn't care about the PISA rankings and so forth.
Okay, but just as curiosity, just to, Hisham, what do you think Malaysia's education should be like? What should it be? A balance of academics and extracurricular activities, or what is it?
I feel that the system should be decentralized. For example, a Ministry of Education shouldn't put a KBSM for everybody to follow, shouldn't decide funding for everybody, shouldn't decide policy for everybody. They've done well in the blueprint where they've given more autonomy for principals. But state and district education boards should have more authority to set how they want to teach their particular students. Because the problems of Sekolah Menengah Bukit Bandaraya in Bangsa is very different from the problems of Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Batu Pahat. But yet they have the same policies. They follow the same rules. There are schools in Terengganu, there are schools in Sabah Sarawak where they are fully funded, but they got like 5 kids.
But then that would mean that you would need teachers and headmasters who can sit down to work out their own curriculum. Wouldn't that be a strain? Or wouldn't you need some sort of specialists to do these sort of things?
You can employ specialists, and the education ministry has done so. But in the end of the day, they have to find their own way with the parents involved. The PIBGs and all that.
So thank you guys for this dialogue on education. I'm sure that we'll have to have more dialogues on education because it's a really important issue for all the children of ASEAN countries, especially, with the coming of the 2015 community and a lot of talks, especially coming from the ASEAN Youth Declaration. We will be covering a session on that from one of our NGOs, reporters who came back from Myanmar, attending their ASEAN People's Forum and ASEAN Youth Forum. She will be sharing with us what she learned there. Yeah. Finally, for today, we have a news piece from Cambodia talking about how the Australian Greens leader are talking about atrocities that's taking place in Cambodia. So there are shocking human rights atrocities that's going on, where we have heard reports earlier this year talking about how 5 workers were shot dead by government forces because they were on the street seeking for a decent wage. And now Han Sen, which is the leader behind some would call an illegitimate government, that has been he's actually currently the longest running leader of an ASEAN country. So now that all these things are happening in Cambodia, yet the people of Cambodia are still very, very passionate about securing a democratic outcome for their country. And Australia.
What's his name, the leader?
Han Sen.
Han Sen.
Han Sen.
Han Sen was a Khmer Rouge leader. He was a terrorist, a rebel. Yeah, he took up arms against the government, and finally he became the top man, Han Sen. Yeah, he's blind in one eye, if I remember correctly. But anyway, his human rights record is just horrible, just terrible. And to shoot someone who's asking for decent wage, I mean, come on lah. It's just way too much. Like, this is just...
I feel that the bullet that it cost you to shoot someone would have been easily paid for their wage, right? It's...
their wage is so
last
low.
we heard, it's maybe like $100 US dollars.
I don't know, but it's just ridiculous to shoot somebody just because they're asking for a better life, just so that they can have a little bit more on their table.
And this is precisely why activism or human rights or rule of law is important, and why our next session is very important for you to tune in. Thank you very much. See you in our next session.